coming up next on Horsepower Heritage.
One point we were leaking fluid and then there's just moisture everywhere we don't want it, right? You open up the carburetors and there's water. A lot of those miles we were running on 1 or 2 cylinders. I was having to drive in first or second gear. When the ski would break, we might be 2.5 hours out. And so you're driving back in first gear over blue ice. It was very unsettling at times to say, what are we doing and where are we going?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick. And if you haven't heard the show before, I think this is going to be your new favorite because it's a different kind of automotive podcast. And it's all about the people and the stories behind the machines. I like to explore the history of all sorts of things, everything from hot rodding to Formula One, even some motorcycle stuff from time to time. So hit that follow button, share the show with your friends, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can leave me a 5-star rating, and that really helps us out. And today, Renee and Christina Brinkerhoff, the ladies from Valkyrie Racing, return to the show to talk about their epic trip to Antarctica, driving a very special Porsche 356 across the ice, and raising money to help fight child trafficking. So if you haven't heard episode 44 of the show, which was back on November 3rd, you might want to listen to that one first because it'll give you the whole backstory on all their racing adventures around the world and their charity work. But on today's episode, we're going to the South Pole, and you're also going to learn how you can win a fully restored Porsche 356 of your own. You don't want to miss it, and that's coming up right after this. Hey everybody, Maurice Merrick here, and I want to tell you what's new at Model Citizen Diecast. First, there's the Porsche 718 Boxster and Cayman in 1/43rd scale. Perfect size for your desktop or your bookshelf. Or how about a Shelby GT350R prototype or a Volvo 850 Turbo Wagon, both in big 1/18th scale. And my listeners get 10% off when you use the code HERITAGE at checkout. Limitations apply. Just go to modelcitizendiecast.com and see what's new. From race cars to street cars and everything in between, it's Model Citizen Diecast. Because your inner child still wants to play with cars. Welcome home, you guys.
Thank you.
It's a thrill to be here again with you. I don't have much prepared, honestly. I have a few questions in my head, but I think this is just going to unfold very naturally. And obviously, I followed it all on your social media. There were some challenges, and we'll get into that. I also want to get into your feelings, your emotions, your perceptions. Once you were on the ground and things were happening, why don't we start with jumping off to South America and the anticipation of getting to the South Pole?
Gosh, well, I think we didn't breathe for 6 months because once that car got on a ship, it was go time, and it was all the things that needed to be prepared and the logistics of traveling in COVID, which is so not interesting to talk about, but they're manyfold. And about 7 days before our departure, or 8 days, I talked to my mom. I said, Mom, I was rereading this email. We still don't have our mobility pass from Chile, which grants us entry. And then we did it, plunged off the diving board of understanding exactly that. And then come to find out it usually takes 3 weeks. And so this was a week before Thanksgiving. Turns out it was the week of Thanksgiving. We had to put everything in motion, but we didn't think we were going to make it. So the leading up, the anticipation was fraught by so much fear that we weren't even going to be there because the stakes were so high. And we had a gentleman meeting with the embassy, and we had senators writing letters on our behalf and congressmen. And anyway, by the time they came through, which was a complete act of God, I was an hour and a half away, and we had 3 hours to our flight, and I wasn't packed. So it was complete insanity. We got there. I think I cried at the airport, Mom. I think you did. Neither of us cry ever. And it was crazy. So we got there, and then we had a week before our departure to Antarctica. So, and that time was just preparation time down in Chile, buying things that we missed and for things I hadn't packed. But it was an amazing feeling to be in that close. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, what you're saying, and this isn't a place that you can just say, oh, let's postpone it a week, or that's okay. We'll reschedule this. And we were going to be missing our flight and we booked another, but there's all these people and all this logistics and all these things that come together and have to come together perfectly. And it's a really short season when you're down there. And also, it's not like they have a flight every day. They may have one flight that comes in 2 weeks. So if we missed our flight in, well, when's the next flight in? Right? But it came together. It all came together.
Well, I can imagine that emotional release. You said you never cry, but all of the stress and anticipation and a million things running through your head. What have I missed? What's in store for us? I completely understand.
Gosh, I packed in 8 minutes. There's literally no exaggeration. I packed in 8 minutes flat and I raced as fast as I could to the airport. And I thought, I have no idea what it brought. I'm going to Antarctica and I have no clue. So, there was so much in the getting there that was incredible. And so I think by the time we got on the ice, for so many reasons, it felt like we were landing on the moon. It was just the most unreal experience I've ever experienced in my life.
So the car was there about 3 weeks, a month before you guys actually got to Antarctica.
Right. When we got there, and I don't know what you would envision, Christina, but I'd envisioned that it would be in some type of shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, yeah, the car's here. It's been 3 weeks. And okay, let's go find the car. And we went to find the car. And no, it wasn't in some kind of shelter. It's just sitting outside. Which, okay, so what's the big deal? Because of the weather. It's not just sitting outside, like you're saying in Southern California where you live. It's sitting outside with winds that are just, like hurricane winds.
Sub-zero weather.
Sub-zero weather. And this little car is just sitting out there for 3 weeks. Like, okay, hopefully nothing cracked. Because I had a concern because of the car's accidents and its history, that the metal could have places where it would break open and crack open, literally, right? Repairs, right, in that body that might start coming apart. So I thought, how did it tolerate those temperatures and not knowing? And then getting in that little car and then right away, and the camp, because of, again, the pandemic with COVID, they were weeks behind in setting up their own camp to do all of their logistics for all the people that are coming down to do exploration to the pole or all these kinds of things.
Yeah, you're not the only game in town, right? They've got other stuff they got to worry about.
Oh gosh.
Oh, yeah.
This is their season. It's super short and it's packed. It's packed like clockwork, right? As much as it can be, knowing that everything is totally weather dependent. And you have to be super fluid with what your expectations are. So we got the car and immediately I got in and tried to, start it. And it almost turned over, which was incredible. Almost, it's like, okay, it almost did it. And so we ended up putting it inside in one of these tents that they had. And in the morning went in and sure enough, it did. It started up.
When car batteries get super cold, the car doesn't want to crank. It's not the air-cooled engine that I would be worried about. It would be the battery and getting that to a temperature where you can actually crank it over. By the way, when you got to Union Glacier, were the people that were there, the people that work there, kind of like, who are these two crazy ladies and what are they doing?
They were so excited about the project. Even in Chile, the logistics people on the ground in Punta Arenas were like, we know about your car. We've seen photos. We're so excited about what you're doing. And so there was this huge esprit de corps from the community there, the people that worked there, that have worked there for 10 plus years, because they see everything. But they were so excited for the little Porsche. When it was parked, it had the tracks on it, but it didn't have the skis. And so the first day we landed and Simon started putting the skis on. And then once you saw the car in its full form, which truly is potentially the perfect version of a Porsche 356, I think we think now, it turned into a whole different creature. So everybody was, so excited for us and seeing if we could make the mileage and the whole journey.
Well, I imagine it's pretty entertaining for them, right? They've got their work and what else is going on down there? And suddenly you guys are there with this awesome car and this really ambitious expedition.
What they actually, can I just to go along with that, the people that are there, so this is the only private kind of logistics company in all of Antarctica. So let's say you want to go and attempt to break the world record of cross-country skiing to the South Pole. You would hook up with these people.
Gotcha.
They would support you with radios and communication and check with you on your journey. They would be the ones that, if possible, they'd fly in to pick you up if you had an accident, medical emergency or something. So they have people that come in there that are trying to do world firsts or whatever is on their list of the things that they've come there for. Some are for science, some are to climb the highest mountain, and some are to do what we were doing. And so they've seen everything. Mm-hmm. They've seen every kind of thing down there. And like Christina was alluding to, they were so excited about what we were doing. And they were really excited why we were doing it. So the fact of why we were doing it for kids that were trafficked, that resonated with them so much. And there was all this passion about the little car and what we were trying to do with it. Unlike these other things that they see all the time, this one really garnered their interest and enthusiasm.
That's awesome. So, okay, so you get there, you get settled in, the car's getting prepped. How long from the time you land until it's engine start and let's go?
Gosh, we got started the next day. We got in on a Sunday afternoon, but we put the skis on that first night. We got it inside. And then we started mileage on Monday, Mom, right? Immediately
got the support vehicle lined up. What vehicle are we going to be in? Getting the tools and the parts and everything in the back of that vehicle. So everything had to be done. And we started that from the moment we hit the ground on Sunday. So when Monday morning rolled around and the car turned over and it was a blue sky day, it was like, let's get going, because weather is that unknown that you have no control over. And we had 2 days of sunshine. And after that, the weather just became a big issue. And so we knew that could be the case. And we just immediately got in that car and started to put on miles.
Okay. So just to refresh listeners, and they can go back and listen to our original interview, right? When we talked about the preparation for the trip and everything, but you're doing 356 miles across the ice and it's point A to point B and back, right?
Originally.
Okay.
That was originally the plan. But what happened was, because of the ALE, which is the Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions Company, and they're getting late to camp, they're still setting up. So for us to do what our plan was, fuel would need to have been dropped along a route, and because there are no gas stations. And there were no fuel dumps for us. So now we had to come up with a plan B. And there's 3 or 4 glaciers around that area. And so we immediately said, okay, let's take this car up into these mountains. Let's go in elevation and let's go into these glaciers.
So you were doing twice the mileage every day. Like whatever miles you did that day, you had to backtrack and do it.
Yeah. Or we would take these huge loops that would take us over these glacier passes where there's, really, really intense crevassing. So you'd have to stay in a really direct path in order to safely traverse everything. But we would do these, we'd go up into the mountains and we'd come down. And again, there's just complete whiteout. So you're out there really in the elements and feeling very remote, even though we weren't that far. We were a couple hours from camp.
So now you're doing loops, which actually probably ended up working a lot better. Even if you hadn't had any mechanical problems, just for your own comfort and safety, that was probably a better plan, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, it was extreme and it was in so many ways, it was treacherous and it was so challenging that being able to come back and have putting up a tent every day in a different place, that was amazing. But I certainly think there's a version where we'd like to go to an even more extreme element and probably have to go do those things.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not ones to pick the walk in the park, right? The easy road. So yeah, it was nice to actually go get a hot meal and not have to cook it yourself over a little Bunsen burner camp stove and set up your own tent every night. But those were really the things that we were looking forward to, was doing those things and having the car out there and heading toward the pole. And but that wasn't meant to be. So we came up with our plan B and it was perfect.
Well, roughing it is definitely fun. I'm in favor of it. I'm just thinking about how bone chilling it would have been, to be remote every night.
Yeah, we were roughing it regardless. So
sure.
We did have a warm meal at night, which was amazing. And we had our tent that was already put up. So
yeah, you weren't returning to the Union Glacier Resort and Spa every night.
No, we were not. Yeah, we were not.
So the plan is Renee and Jason DeCarteret, who is the go-to guy for Antarctic expeditions, right? The two of you are in the 356. Christina, you're following along in another vehicle, right? And you're capturing it all on film.
Correct. Yeah. It was myself, Simon, our mechanic, who's been with us on every continent, and then Neil, who's shooting film, and I was shooting photos. So it's us in a truck, and we're the support vehicle, kind of the support vehicle, but in reality, the Porsche did better than us half the time. So I don't know who would have helped too.
Wow. All right. So the first couple of days, you say you've got fair weather, good conditions. And what happens those first few days? Basically, you're just driving, you're enjoying it, right?
No way.
No.
Immediately, we're having trouble with the car. What is it about the cars?
Yeah. So there's a specific bolt in the front end of the car, right? That holds the skis to the front suspension. Is that basically what it is?
Yeah.
And you guys immediately had shearing bolts, right?
Wait, shearing bolts and iced up carburetors and jets.
Yeah. I mean, day one, it was a blue sky day and it was still sub-zero, and we tried to get as much mileage as we could, but there was trouble out of the gate. I mean, the car runs incredibly well on the skis and tracks compared to a vehicle like the one I was in, a truck, but it's not impervious to the elements. And the biggest complication, I think, was the carburetors, the jets, icing. It was crazy, the icing. And then that bolt, which we only had 4 bolts and 3 broke. And so my mom would be driving it and she had a hanging ski. Sometimes it was the right, sometimes it was the left. And then we'd have to go replace the bolt,
And that process, is that like, okay, we're down for an hour while we replace the bolt? I mean, was it fairly simple?
It's like a 3-hour repair.
3 hour. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there was a couple of nights we were coming in after 10 p.m. and so you're dealing in conditions of 24-hour sun, but it's noon sun. It is bright sun. And even when you have whiteout conditions, it is so bright. It's painfully bright. So you can come in late and not even realize how long you've been out there, how late you're working. It's kind of like Groundhog Day,
Were your body clocks all messed up the whole time?
Mom, what do you think? I don't know.
I didn't feel like it was messed up at all. It didn't bother me, that all day light thing at all. I just, okay, it's 12. Look at your clock. Sure, this, it's bright out. Let's go to bed.
Yeah.
Sort of stuck to a schedule. And yeah, and I didn't have any problem when we got back to Chile or anything adjusting for that. It's amazing how quickly
our bodies adapt.
Adapt to the cold and create ways to keep warm. And the time in the sun is amazing.
I'm glad you mentioned the cold and adjusting to it. One of the things that we should probably remind people about is that the Porsche had no heater inside, because you can't strip down to clothes that would be comfortable in a heated car and then suddenly get out and put on snowsuits. Like, you have to be insulated from the cold at all times in heavy gear. So therefore no heater, right? And I was curious if you had any fogging of the windscreen, things like that, basic stuff.
Sure, definitely. We have a blower that got put in the car when I was racing in Mexico, when the inside would totally fog up and you're trying to clear the windshield with one hand and steer and shift with the other. Really hard to do when you're racing. So we had this blower that, I would have to throw on. It actually snowed in the car. So the environment inside the car, windows up and everything, was such that it was precipitating snow on more than one occasion. You look over and little tiny snowflakes coming down inside the car.
Probably just from the moisture of your respirations and all of that going up into the area above your head and then precipitating down. Weird. Mm-hmm. Talk about a microclimate, huh?
Yeah, it was totally a microclimate, the Porsche microclimate, right?
All right. So the bolt shearing, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? It's a broken bolt. You replace the bolt. It takes the time it takes. But what about the carb icing? Because the normal fix for that you need carb heat. Like in an aircraft, you pull carb heat and hopefully it fixes the problem. But what did you guys do?
Gosh, Simon changed one time. It was more than below -5 degrees with the wind chill. I mean, his hands, he changed the carb out there in a full-blown whiteout. And I think we were all pretty worried about him while he was doing that. His fingers turned into sausages and he changed it on the go. And then the other times he changed it at night when we were in the tent. But Mom, also that engine, when he thought the engine was terminal on Wednesday night, There was a time, gosh, halfway through where we thought we may not get the mileage, and it looked like it was going to need a completely new engine. And
Two times we came in at night, and Simon said, I think she's terminal. And then when we woke up in the morning and tried to start the car to assess everything, started right up.
Wow. Renee, what were the symptoms that made him think that?
Well, at one point we were leaking fluid, and then there's just moisture everywhere we don't want it, right? You open up the carburetors and there's water.
Condensation, yeah.
Yeah, all this stuff. And then, a lot of those miles, we were running on 1 or 2 cylinders. I was having to drive in first or second gear.
Right, because you couldn't get any power out of it. And
No power. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Or like Christina was saying, when the ski would break, we might be 2.5 hours out. And so you're driving back in first gear over blue ice, which is like this.
Yeah, just washboard, right?
Yeah, it's this massive washboard. And
which
he's just hanging. I mean, it's just sort of like, it's just limping, it's broken, right? And you're just trying to get back.
I was going to say, like a washboard road, hence the reason the bolts were shearing.
I don't know, actually.
I mean, it could have been also, the metallurgy combined with the extreme low temperatures. That's probably contributory.
That's another thing we talked about too.
To get that bolt tested. We've got to see exactly what was that bolt made out of, what kind of metal, what's its tolerances, was that the problem, or is it the way it's attaching to the hub?
Right. A stress riser at that attachment point, something like that. Yeah.
Maybe it's the length of the arm from the hub to the ski. Maybe we could change that a little bit, but it's not going to be a massive fix. And like Christina was saying, there were many times we were outperforming the truck. The truck she was in was getting stuck, totally stuck. And
they would take the tires down to 1 PSI to get us out.
Wow.
I mean, it just constantly having to manipulate the tire pressure to deal with the conditions. And you're out there and you're hours from base camp and you're in a wide out and you can't go to your left. You can't go to your right because you're in a crevasse field. And so you're not and the Porsche doesn't have enough power to tow us. So, I mean, there's sometimes you realize how incredibly overpowered you are in those elements. And it just takes something else to go wrong to get yourself in real trouble.
By the way, Christina, what kind of truck was it?
It was a Hilux.
Okay.
It was an Arctic truck. I think I'd actually brought it down from Sweden for an expedition, and then ALE bought it, and they they used that car. They're gonna, after our expedition in it, they were taking it to the South Pole, and they're charting a new route, hopefully with less crevasse fields. And after that, they were going to leave it at the South Pole as their support rescue vehicle.
Gotcha. So, technical question, you guys might not know, but where the bolt was shearing, where it attaches to the skis, was there a bushing there that the bolt passed through? Do you know?
I think so. But Maurice, I think they looked in one of those bolts, and Jason was really concerned what that bolt was actually made of. And he thinks that maybe there was corrosion in the bolt, and maybe it was not the right metal that should have been there. And it wasn't strong enough to support it. Because in one of those on the bolt, it looked like almost there was maybe some rusting on the inside. But I don't know. It's still inconclusive.
Interesting. Well, if you find the answer, let me know. I'll share it on the show, but very interesting. It's also kind of ironic with all of the preparation and the amazing engineering. It comes down to one bolt, right?
3 bolts. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but one component.
Yeah, one component.
And one so simple, right? It's probably a $10 bolt or maybe a $30 bolt, but still.
We were laughing, yeah. Not happily laughing, but just like if it came down to $30 of parts that we could have, you never know. But
that's funny. If it happened almost anywhere else in the world, locals would come out and, find something like in their toolbox or in their shed or something that would work, right? But
totally.
You didn't have that luxury.
No, we're one bolt away from not completing the goal. So
crazy.
Really grateful.
That'd be a good title for, I don't know, some little short story, One Bolt Away, right?
One bolt away. Totally.
So it's not as if the bolt and the carb icing got resolved. You guys were dealing with this, struggling with it the whole time.
Yeah. The car at one point, even though my the guidelines for driving the car based upon what Kieran determined was optimum to not have it break and everything perform well, was less than 30 miles per hour, or about 25 miles per hour. So sometimes, rarely, but there were these moments when I'd say, Jason, how fast am I going? He'd say, oh, 44, better slow down, and we would just be cruising. I could have gone tons faster.
And you probably wanted to.
Of course. When the car is performing like that, right? And you're in that setting, you just want to put your foot down on that pedal.
Sure.
But then there were hours of just driving it in first gear, just hoping you're going to get back. You're not going to have to be towed, right? So that was all the way up until the 5th day. If you think about it, it was only 356 miles. So, but it was some days we did 14 miles, let's say, or 20 miles. And then maybe another day we did 140 miles. And then we also had problems with the throttle cable. We had to pull out one of the throttle cables because it would get stuck and the car would start revving really high or taking off away from me. I didn't have to be anywhere near that throttle pedal and it would just start deciding to go really fast. So we did that on the fly when we were out there. But these things just kept recurring. So the throttle was an issue off and on the whole time, the carburetors, and of course the freezing jets, and then the bolts. That was happening, some combination of that the whole time.
Wow. So you got 24 hours of sun. Do you hang it up at a certain hour every day? And then.
So because of the logistics company and we hadn't dropped fuel right, we ended up coming back to base camp. And there was a couple nights we came back one night after 10 p.m., one after 9 p.m. And so we're getting in late, where they're holding dinner for us. We're so wiped out. And then for me, I have to get media out. I have got to get things back to the States so people know what's going on. So I'm getting my satellite device out and wrestling with it and usually doing that until midnight at least. And then we go drop into bed, wake up and start over. I mean, I don't think we ever stopped. And I think that when we came back, we realized how much pressure and stress we were on because it was just a really high stakes experience for us on so many fronts. So we did get stuck in a huge storm for 4 extra days. So we got to let down a little bit then when we were waiting for a plane to come in. But they were really, really long days, 18-hour days for me.
She said, and then we would go get in our bed. You mean our sleeping bag?
Yeah, our sleeping bag. Yeah.
Our sub-zero, freezing, like, you know how it is. If you ever camped when it's really cold out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in our tent, there's snow on the ground. It's the temperature inside is basically the same as it is inside, and outside is the same. And we're just in these little shelved tents. Christina and I are sharing one in our sleeping bags. And
you got a little shelter from the wind, but other than that, it's
one night, a couple of nights, actually, the winds were so high that some of the tents, not the one we were sleeping in, but some tents 2 or 3 over from us actually got ripped open and taken off. And they had to relocate them at night in someone else's tent because the winds took their tent out.
Miserable.
Yeah, you're psyching, at least I'm psyching myself to get out of my sleeping bag every day because it is so cold. and I have my batteries and my drives in my sleeping bag to keep everything hopefully safe and warm. So, but every morning you got to just hit your chest a little bit theoretically and just get out of and just deal with. I mean, you're getting out and it's sub-zero and you got to get dressed and get things on as fast as possible. And there's ice everywhere and snow everywhere.
Get your game face on.
Gosh, I mean, it was cold. Yeah.
So Renee, you're in the car, you're driving, you're having these problems. You and Jason are communicating. You're worried about probably what's coming next. Were you enjoying it? Did you have time to really just take it in and enjoy it and be in the moment?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Great.
Totally. Even though in the back of your mind is the car going to break? Is the car going to break? I've driven thousands of miles wondering if that car's going to break, and it's breaking. So that's just part of it. We always, because all these races we did, we put the car in really tough environments and situations where it was always being stretched, right? Mechanically and in other ways. But given all that, yeah, I was able to look out at this amazing, amazing landscape. Incredible landscape. And the silence and just hearing the wind and looking out at these places and seeing nothing of man, except for maybe like 20 miles ahead of you or 10 miles or whatever that distance was. As far as I can see, a black flag in the distance that's marking your next place that they've done the penetrating radar for finding crevasses, that's your destination, Other than some few little black flags here and there, there's nothing of the hand of man. And it was just so pristine and so otherworldly. It was gorgeous. And yes, I was able to enjoy that. And it's incredible.
I'm not surprised. I'm glad to hear it. But like you say, the worry and the punishment on the car and the occupants, it's baked into the cake, right? With whatever you guys do.
Always has been. Always has been. Yep. This was just
it's so frustrating sometimes because I was like, Mom, we could have picked a 911 and we could have made our lives, there's like this version where I opine sometimes that we just never chose anything that was easy, even remotely, or while still challenging, at least less challenging. I mean, it is to the max in that little 356.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Those 911s in Africa prepared by Tuthill, which are incredible. The suspension, you don't feel those bumps and dips at all. Well, you do, but it's very cushy. And with us, it's like a sledgehammer hitting you every single time, right? So, yeah.
Hey, I'm curious if you ever had to negotiate any crevasses. You had that big crevasse bar on the front of the car, right? I saw a lot of people on social media wondering, what the heck is that thing? Did you end up using it?
We used it to be towed.
Well, that's right.
Oh, well, there you go.
The tow hook in the front of the car got removed because it's metal and it was heavy. So they removed those all around the car. And there was one point, now this didn't count for the mileage because if we weren't under our own power, those weren't miles that we counted. But there was one point we had to be towed back. And crevasse bar came in very handy or we wouldn't have had anything to attach to.
But Maurice, we would go through these areas and I had a guide in my car and his name's Tom and he's been down there for 12 years and he's super experienced and he would show me, and I know Mom, Jason was doing this in your car, the crevasses on the right and the left side. And you could see that we were going through these really intense crevasse fields where you weren't allowed to go deviate from, you weren't allowed to get out of the car. Really strict rules in terms of how we were navigating so we wouldn't fall in one. But thankfully, you didn't have to use that crevasse bar, Mom.
Yeah, it was there just in case. But no, we didn't. And like you were saying, so there'd be areas where they'd say, do not deviate more than 10 meters to the left or the right. You must stay between this area. And then there'd be other areas where they would let you drive out farther. When I say drive out, it's not like there's a road. There was no road, but there'd be literally a black cloth flag way in the distance. And sometimes you couldn't see it. But we were able to, at some point, get some GPS waypoints for those. Okay, that's where we're headed. That's where we're going. And stick to it. Don't, get off to the left or the right, but stick to that. It's crucial that you follow that track. And again, it's even then, it's never 100%. They're using ice penetrating radar. The glaciers are moving continually all the time. And they know what they've done, but there's still always things like even areas when Jason was getting towed, when he did his world record, at one point he had to be towed. And they were using a route that had been traveled so many times and had ice penetrating radar. But that day, it broke through the crevasse, and their car that they were towing fell in that crevasse. So it's never 100% certain that even the areas where they call safe are truly safe. It's never a given. It's an approximate thing.
Driving in those conditions, you've got bright sunlight and everything's white, snow and ice, probably relatively few features. Were you disoriented behind the wheel at all?
Yes, absolutely. There were times when that you have to be following because you can't see what's top, what's bottom, what's sky, what's land. It's all the same. It's all white on white. And we were using GPS coordinates and trying to find our way. And Jason would say, no, go a little more left. No, now go a little more right, trying to keep you on track. And you have no visual reference. And you don't know. And this is not a smooth surface. This surface could have a sastrugi in front of it that could be, 4 or 5 inches or 6 or 7 feet tall. You don't know. And you can't see what's in front of you. So even though this is the direction you're supposed to be going, it doesn't mean that you're on a smooth path, that you don't have dips or big things in front of you that you could run into. And so, it was very unsettling at times to say, what are we doing and where are we going, right? And at some point, it just got so bad with the wind and the white, I was like, let's turn around. Let's head back down this glacier, down the mountain, and try to see if we can find our tracks to head back down. there's no need to kill ourselves, right? So yes, it was totally a different experience in driving.
And Christina, following on, what was it like just watching that car go across the ice and snow, and you're filming? And
Well, first of all, it's incredible because the car moves so well, and it's so well engineered that it's just so fun to watch. If you haven't seen video, Maurice, I'll send you some. It's unbelievable how well it does when it's not limping from a broken bolt. But there's that, which is incredible. But I was constantly having to take my glacier glasses off. So I got arc eye, and that's just from the UV burning my eyes, and my hands because I'm taking my gloves off to manipulate the camera. So it was incredible, but it's not comfortable, right? And I'm also I'm outside the car, set up for a shot half the time, just braving the elements. So it's a immersive experience, to say the least. But it's just it brings up so much pride in me just to watch my mom drive that car through those, through that extreme environment, for sure.
And when you're faced with a background that's all the same color and you don't have any depth of field, I would find myself hunting for a different angle and shot all the time. Did you find that to be a challenge? It's
exhausting because you're trying and you're shooting basically a similar environment every day, because we were in whiteout conditions for 4 days. And so it just looks the same. It's a sheet of paper. And so for me, it's like, okay, well, how do I make this look different on a sheet of paper? You really quickly have to get really creative on how you're shooting it and how you can capture it, because the environment, the backdrop didn't change for many days.
And is the plan to produce a documentary film on this?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing the last 4 years, or however many years it's been, on every continent. And gosh, we're getting into the editing phase, which is so exciting. And it's weird to be getting to this stage of it, because we've just been had each continent looming ahead of us, and who's the team and who's coming, and all the logistics with filming on every continent, right? They're not insignificant. So we're coming to the final chapter, thankfully.
That's cool.
And then I think we can see how we can explore getting it out there.
You could have a screening at Goodwood.
I know.
Can you imagine how cool that would be?
So cool.
In the evening at Goodwood on a big screen with everybody watching in the grandstands.
I like where your head is, Maurice.
I mean,
I love
awesome.
it. Yeah.
Could do it at Pebble the night before, maybe. I don't know. The night before the Concours.
No, this is a great idea.
Well, we got to put our heads together. I'll help you out.
I love it. I love it.
What we haven't talked about is Valkyrie Gives.
Yes, that's what I was going to bring up. Valkyrie Gives.
So let me just say, for the record, I was really proud to represent Valkyrie Gives over the last few months. Just, get involved with it, be a part of it. Mm-hmm. I contributed myself, as well as encouraging my listeners to do so on the podcast. I'm curious where you're at with that and any news that you have to share.
Oh, gosh. The most incredible thing about this journey is being able to raise money and to give 100% of that money to frontline organizations around the world. My mom and I were on a call with the woman named Sophia Otinde in Nairobi this morning, and we're able to fund 2 organizations, one in Nairobi, one in Mombasa. They're very, very in the nascent stages of being sort of a fully functioning NGO, and they're not able to fundraise properly. And so we're going to give them a cash injection that's going to get them off their feet. And they rescue girls, they restore their lives, and they reconnect them with the families where it makes sense. And if not, they provide education and safe harbor where it doesn't. So we were just talking about what an amazing gift that we can be conduits of these funds that so many people have come alongside us to help support. So it's the richest part of our jobs and our lives and what we're doing with this little car. And right now we have this really cool partnership with Omaze, where you can win a Porsche 356. It ends March 5th. You can go to omaze.com/win this Porsche. And the portion of the tickets you buy to try to win the Porsche come to Valkyrie Gives. And it's a really fun way to support Valkyrie Gives and hopefully win a Porsche 356.
That's good news. And Omaze is doing big stuff. What a great partner to have, right?
Oh, we're so honored to be there. We're a little fish for them, but they so believed in our story and what we were doing. They bought the car. I mean, they shipped it. They had Tut Hill Porsche impeccably restore it. We were able to see it at the Peterson Museum in early November. And so we can't wait for one of our friends or followers or just an unknown stranger who's supporting us to win the Porsche. It's incredible to see in person.
And by the way, I'll put links in the show notes to all of this. All they have to do is go to omaze.com/win this Porsche.
I think it's important for people that follow our journey and support Valkyrie Gives to understand that the Valkyrie Racing and Valkyrie Gives are separate in the sense that all of our racing is sponsored. 100% of that is sponsored. And every dollar that we get as a donation into Valkyrie Gives goes out. We have no overhead. We take no salaries. And we vet organizations that are on the front lines having a real touch and impact with children that are being trafficked. And so all the money that comes in goes out 100%.
Yeah, that's important to keep in mind because we don't want people to get the idea that their money is going to racing the car. That's absolutely not what's happening. So after 5 days of struggling, not the smoothest journey, but you did it. How did that feel when it was finally over?
Massive relief, massive feeling of accomplishment, exhilaration. There was so much pressure knowing we had to get that done. The car could not fail. Unexpectedly, out of nowhere, we're about 2 miles from finishing, and I'm just hiding behind my polar glasses, and I'm just crying. I just cannot believe it. We're here. We're here.
Yeah, it is so interesting. I'm in a separate car, but same thing. The last mile, I just started crying because I know what my mom's gone through and how much it's been a life transformation for my mom. It was an incredibly emotional moment in some of the most stunning landscape I probably will ever lay eyes on.
And I'm sure your team was exhilarated and just, you guys must have just had such a feeling of camaraderie and esprit de corps.
Absolutely. And Maurice, all the people, including yourself, that gave to our Donate 356 project, they were coming along with us. All those people whose names we inscribed on the inside of that hood. And then all the people that have been along with this journey with us all along. It was like we had to get this job done. And when we came back into camp after finishing those miles, somebody must have radioed ahead. It must have been Tom in your vehicle, Christina, because all the staff, the employees that work for that company were outside. And, they're running comms for different things. They've got all their jobs that they're doing. And they all came out of their tents and were standing outside in this bitter weather, and they're cheering us on. It was so amazing to see that from them and to feel that. It was like, whoa, this really was an accomplishment. And
was there any champagne popped when this was all over? Yes,
we did. So right there at the base of Drake Ice Fall, which is the location where we finished the mileage, we got that bottle of champagne out. Now, because of the cold, the cork did not want to come out. And it took a lot of work. Like nothing was easy about this, right? But yes, we definitely had a champagne toast when we were out there. It was actually not champagne, it's Chilean sparkling wine, but it suited us perfectly.
Good enough. Actually, more appropriate, really.
Yeah,
totally.
Great.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming back on and giving us a recap. I felt like I was there along with you in some small way, and it was great to watch it. Christina, I'm glad you were able to post stuff because
if you could have seen me fighting with that satellite on a nightly basis, my goodness, it wasn't easy getting anything out.
There's only one satellite that traverses that part of the world. And then with weather and all these other things, to get a link that would hold long enough for Christina to upload something. I mean, it would start, it'd be almost finished, and then it'd start all over again. So, yeah.
Maybe for long days.
Yeah, we were so wanting to share everything every day, and we did our best on that end.
I think you did great. So I appreciated it. I'll tell you that.
Thanks so much, Maurice.
Yeah, we love being on your show. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, ladies. Christina Brinkerhoff, Renee Brinkerhoff, Valkyrie Racing. Thanks again. That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. If you like what you've heard, you can support the show over at buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage and throw a few bucks in the gas tank. I'll see you back here on Wednesday, February 23rd, when we'll be talking about an interesting little sports car that was hand-built in the 1950s, and it's now making a comeback in the 21st century. So until then, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.